Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to go into the world of sex. So, let me put this out there ahead of time. This is for adult viewing only. Let me also put this out. This is a zone-free zone, which means you should feel comfortable talking about anything you want on this platform. And it's about education, empowerment, and standing that beast mindset. We're not here to judge nobody. We're here to listen and understand and to more or less walk in somebody else's shoes for a minute. But today is a very interesting topic because we're talking about sex and sexual liberation, pretty much. And we have a new podcast that's been around for a while. I'm pretty sure you guys heard of it, the Pineapple Express podcast that's been around for a couple of years. And the creator is on the show. And we're going to talk about how this whole Pineapple Express podcast came about, a little bit about her journey and why she chose this lifestyle, but more importantly, how she went from sex worker, which we'll talk about, into a sex coach. And the way we're going to do this show is going to be a little bit different. I wrote a series of questions, and I'm going to ask, because I think these are questions that probably the viewers would want to ask, say, now sex worker, sex coach. Like a welcome to the show all the way from Cleveland, Ohio, the one, the only Kiley. And I got the last name.
Thank you so
George,
much.
Kiley George.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, Kiley, your bio is interesting to say the least. But before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about you. I know you grew up in Cleveland. I'd share with you that I lived in Avon Lake. You're born and raised. Give us a little bit about who Kiley George is before we get into the podcast and the sex worker to sex coach.
Hi, guys. Yeah, so my name is Kiley George. I am a 33-year-old mother. I'm a wife. I am in the non-monogamy community, so that means that I am a swinger. And but me and my husband, we do a lot of community work in Cleveland. And we have just a large group of friends that are also, sex positive, non-monogamous people. And I'm also a sex worker. So I'm a dancer, like an exotic dancer, which is considered sex work. And I've now moved into sex coaching, like you had mentioned. And I'm also a content creator. And so I do a lot of content creation on Instagram, Facebook. I do content creation on TikTok. And now I am moving more into definitely more podcasting. So my Pineapple Express podcast has been around for 2 years.
You say you grew up in Cleveland. What was it like for you growing up in Cleveland? We've heard the stories of Cleveland more so about their sports relations. But what was it like growing up for you in Cleveland? What side of town did you grow up on? Like I said, I lived in Avon Lake. I guess that's called a suburb. Where did you grow up at? Shakers Heights? Where?
So I grew up on the east side of Cleveland, very east side of Cleveland, in a suburb. So like Menor, East Lake area.
Okay.
And then as I got older, I moved more west side. So now I live on the west side, of Cleveland. And for me growing up, honestly, I've always loved Cleveland. I think it's such an underappreciated city. There's so much to do here. It's clean. The people are nice. There's a lot of culture, especially like diverse culture, queer culture. And a lot of people dog on Cleveland. And, okay, yeah, so our sports teams are not the greatest
Right.
historically. Um, but realistically, it's so beautiful. In the summertime, it's like paradise. And I just love living here. I don't think that I would ever, me and my husband have talked about moving to other places. And we're just like, no, Cleveland is so beautiful. We've got like parks to hike in, and the nature is beautiful. Just all the culture is amazing.
What was it like for you growing up in Cleveland? Because then we'll get into how you became the exotic dancer. I'm gonna take the viewers through a step by step. But what was your childhood like in Cleveland? Because you gotta be you got to be strong to live in Cleveland. I know about East 99 and the Bone Thugs and Harmony type things. I kind of venture through Cleveland, and you're right. It's a beautiful city, beautiful culture. I love the downtown environment. It's truly beautiful. But what's it like growing up for you as a child in Cleveland?
I think that I definitely came from a lot of privilege. Like I said, I grew up in the suburbs. I went to Catholic school, which of course, I was always really interested in a lot of different things, eclectic things, and going to Catholic school that wasn't so, you know, um, I guess it was sort of demonized in a way. But growing up for me, I mean, I just learned really like early on, I knew that I was bisexual and I knew that I was different. And I knew that I was more open-minded. And I think a lot of that has to do with, Cleveland itself is just a very open-minded city because of all of the diversity. Um, and I think, my parents, like a lot of people online will say things like, oh, well, your parents didn't love you because you're this sexually open person. And really, that's not the case. I came from a very loving family with a lot of privilege and just a lot of, I had a lot of love in the home. And I think that some people are just different, and that's okay.
What do you mean when you use the word privilege? What do you mean by that?
Well, I grew up in the suburbs, so I had a lot of privilege. I grew up in, my parents were divorced, but I still came from a very loving home, and a lot of kids don't have that privilege. A lot of people don't have that.
You mentioned you always knew you was bisexual. What age did you come into this consciousness that you already knew? And were there experiments done to validate this? And if so, what was the age?
So I had knew that I was attracted to women, and I'll kind of bring you back to like the early 2000s. If anybody remembers like the Lindsay Lohan Rumors video, or like I would watch MTV and I would see these girls and I just thought, wow, they're so beautiful. Like I was sexually attracted to them. So coming into my sexuality and starting to experiment with sex at about 16 or 17 years old, that's when I really started to experiment. And I met a couple on Craigslist. This was back in like probably 2007, 2008. And I met this couple and I experimented with the girlfriend of the couple. We were close to the same age. I think she might have been a year or two older than me. But the experimentation was, of course, with a couple, and we were both bisexual. So I considered myself someone who experimented with non-monogamy early on. And like I said, those were my first sexual experiences with females.
Did you share any of this with your family? You say you come from privilege and close knit family group. Did you share this with your mom and your dad?
So I didn't until I was older because I didn't know how they would react to it, especially like I think in the early 2000s, people knew about bisexuality, but a lot of times when especially somebody who socializes as a woman would talk about it, it would be more so like, oh, you're bisexual, so you're just looking for attention or you are just a slut. It was never like a valid form of sexuality. So I was afraid to really talk to people about it. My parents, I knew that they would be okay with it, but I was still having this understanding and exploring because I wasn't sure. It was more of a bi curiosity and an exploration phase. And until I really knew for sure that I was bisexual, that's when I came out to them.
You said when you really knew. How did you really know? And you said experiment. So at that age, what exactly is experimenting in your definition? Because I, I don't is experimenting also considered grooming because you're dealing with older people and you clearly said you was young. So could that be considered grooming you and then maybe I guess, how did you really know? Because you were such a young age. How did you know?
I think it's similar to like how do you know that you enjoy having sex with men if you're a woman, you know? I think that it really just depends on like inner, reflecting within yourself, like, how does this make me feel? What sort of feelings am I feeling? Do I really like this? And that was really what it was like just this exploration of understanding of like, okay, I had sex with a woman and now we're developing feelings. And that's how I knew how that I was truly bisexual, was because I was developing these emotional, loving, romantic feelings for women, as opposed to just sort of having these like sexual fantasies of having a threesome, or sort of having sex with a female for the male gaze. Because in the beginning, I think that that's sort of how it started out. I was like, oh, well, maybe her boyfriend will like this or something like that. And then it really turned into, no, this is truly like a sexual, like this is me and my sexuality right now.
You say you were 16 years old when you started experimenting with this and dealing with couples, correct?
16, 17 years old. And then at the time she was 18 and her boyfriend was, I think he was either 18 or 19.
So you definitely had intercourse with a man too, I assume, right? Or a young man.
Yes. So the first experience that me and her had was just us. And then I started, like, she had asked me after that, like, would you be interested in having threesomes with us? And I was like, I'd be down for that, I'd be okay with that. And then got me thinking, oh, then is this really bisexuality, or am I doing this because, again, like the male gaze? And then I realized I was enjoying the experiences with her in these sexual experiences more, and I was developing romantic feelings for her, and I wasn't for her boyfriend.
Why do you think that was? Because you developed feelings for her. Is that probably because you was with her more so than the man?
Yeah. And I think that it was just a normal, organic, development of feelings. I just wasn't really interested in him. We didn't really have a lot in common. He just really wasn't my type. And there was just something about her that was very special to me. We had a lot in common, and we were both exploring our sexuality together, which kind of brought us closer.
So did you alienate men because now you're starting to resonate more on the feminine side, but did you even give the male a chance to resonate at all?
Um, well, and I think part of that was I was still in this sort of mononormative mindset, which means that, like, of course, all of us who are monogamous, um, you think that you can only be in love or have feelings for one person at a time. And at the time, that's what I believed. So I almost felt like if I did develop feelings for him, that it would sort of be like cheating on her, or this sort of like wrong thing to do to her. And I think that that's why that didn't organically develop. I think if I went back today, it might have. And unfortunately, their relationship ended very badly because he developed feelings for me. I didn't have feelings for him, and she had feelings for both of us, and none of us, because we didn't have anything to base any of this off of and we're young, it was very messy. And I think a lot of that again had to do with our age and our lack of worldly knowledge.
Okay, so let's move forward. You brought up some key things, and we're going to go back because they actually relate to some of the questions that I'm going to uh, uh, put on you. So you get older, you're in the entertainment, the adult entertainment um, occupation as a dancer and so forth. You still carry this belief into your adulthood, but you said something that's very impactful. No matter how you're looking at it, you're still dealing with emotions. Intimacy
Mhm.
develops emotions. It's a chemical process that we all go through. How do you how do you avoid not having this and having it affect your relationship? And then I'm gonna get into my questions.
So I don't really avoid emotions. I deal with the emotions as they come and I communicate with all my partners involved. I have felt loving romantic feelings for people in the swinger lifestyle because that's just who I am as a person. I love very hard and I have a lot of love to give. Uh, but I also keep that to friendships and I don't necessarily go beyond that if they're not comfortable or if my partner is not comfortable with that. So I'm married and I have a husband now, and we both just keep that open communication. But I try, a lot of people in the swingers lifestyles are like, no, emotions are bad and we don't feel them and we only do this for the sex. And for me, I think it's so much more than that. It's about connecting with community and friends and really sharing loving experiences with people that can be more casual if everyone's okay with that. And I think it's just that open communication.
Okay, I'm gonna start with my questions. Do you mind? Can we go?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. My first question is, from your viewpoint, what does it feel like to live an upside down lifestyle, and how does it impact your sense of self?
For me, it feels like I am who I truly am. I'm being my authentic self, and I get to go into non-judgmental parties and rooms and events and be around people who don't judge me, and that feels really good.
Okay, great. My next question. You once wrote, when you spend your day coaching clients, embracing the upside pineapple lifestyle, and focusing on your own healing, it's better than telling married men to keep their hands to themselves. What deeper meaning is behind this post? And don't women deserve the right to say no without consequently defending that right?
So the meaning behind that post is really that I'm moving out of dancing and sex work
Mhm.
because it really has impacted my mental health. And it's because when people see you, when you they go to strip clubs and they see dancers, they don't look at us like we're humans. And they think that because we're dancers, they can put their hands on us and not listen to us when we assert our boundaries. And it's almost like I'm afraid to assert my boundaries in some ways because then I'm like, well, I'm not going to make any money, you know? And so I think that it's interesting, and I'm purposely put married men because most of the people who are doing things like that are married men. And so, yeah, I'm coming into this space of just getting out of sex work and getting more into content creating and coaching because that's not a healthy environment for me anymore.
When you say it's not healthy, what do you mean? Are you afraid of your life? Or are you afraid that it's going to um, paint a different? Because naturally, you must feel something uncomfortability about what you were doing or about to get into, because now you're rebranding yourself from the sex worker into the sex coaching. So what are some of the things that you actually are fearing that's making you leave that particular field outside of the
So I think
touching and so forth?
over the course of the past couple of years, I've noticed a very much a decline in the amount of money that people are making. It's really, dancers are making, and it's really not worth it for me anymore to assert all of this physical energy because you're doing the performance and the dancing, which I love that aspect of it. That's one of the reasons why I got into it was because I enjoy performing and I enjoy the, dancing and the art of pole dance. But unfortunately, we're in a space now where there's a lot of people who are just sort of exploiting sex workers, and they're going into these spaces because they want to be there, but they don't have the extra money. Strip clubs are a luxury, and people don't look at us like we're luxury items anymore. They look at it like, oh, well, I'm here, so you have to dance, monkey dance for me. And I don't like that anymore. It's not comfortable for me. I see a lot more girls doing I see them doing things beyond my own personal boundaries, and they're okay with that. And I think everybody's boundaries are theirs, but I'm not comfortable doing those things. I'm not comfortable with somebody touching me in a way that doesn't feel good for me. And so it was really impacting my mental health, and it was really impacting my sense of self. And I knew that I had to do something different.
What's the difference with the way that the the actions in the strip club versus the actions of people touching you in a swinger lifestyle? I mean, you don't what's the differential? Because you don't like that, but you're going into another environment where clearly I don't know if there's a respect thing going on in there, or you guys change phone numbers. I don't know, but what's the difference?
Consent and communication. In the swinger lifestyle, I there is 100% clear consent, and there is no power dynamics. In the strip club environment, there are power dynamics, and the person who has the money has the power dynamic over you. So it's almost this way of, pleasing someone or faking some things in order. And we know this about strippers. They totally have to just fake their whole personality in order to make money.
Mm.
It's a fantasy. You're acting. And for me, it started to feel really uncomfortable. And the difference between that is when I'm in a swinger space, I'm authentic and I get to choose who touches me. And I don't get to choose that in because my money is directly tied to the people that I'm dancing for.
Okay. Next question. As a young woman, did you ever feel like you had to please others just to survive? And how did that affect you? How did that affect your self-worth?
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, I think growing up, I always wanted to please my parents and wanted to please my teachers and my friends, and I just wanted acceptance. So as I grew up, I learned, especially in interactions with other men, you know, um, I I really just wanted to please them as well. And so when I got into my 30s and I started swinging, it really like put a magnifying glass on these behaviors, right? Because I'm seeing myself like getting along, just to get along. I'm just trying to please everybody, and I want everybody to like me and accept me. And it put a magnifying glass on that. And I think that that was one of the biggest parts of my self-healing journey and it started with swinging, was recognizing I don't have to please people. People don't have to like me, because the right people will come into my life regardless, and I have to have acceptance of that.
Let's talk about overcoming rejection and how that amplified your sense of being, or did it amplify your sense of being?
Oh yeah, especially in the beginning of the swinger life, when we started in the swinger lifestyle, it really impacted me, and it made me feel like, what's wrong with me? Am I ugly? Am I gross? Am I, too fat or too thin? Or like, what's wrong with me? And I think a lot of people have that experience, and then you sort of become resilient to it. And I think that this goes along with sex work as well. I'm not everybody's type, and
Mm.
that's okay. But I'm definitely somebody's type, and I'm gonna find the right person. And I think that a lot of times when we deal with rejection, we think of it like, oh, these people don't like me, there's something wrong with me. But in reality, they're the ones who are missing out on a really good time. I'm a lot of fun, and I think I'm beautiful, and I think that I'm amazing to be around, and I'm a great friend, and all those things. And I think that we think there's something wrong with us, but really it's their loss.
Okay, next question. Um, in a relationship, how do women truly value and contribute to themselves? What happens when they lose sight of their own worth?
I think what happens when you lose sight of your own worth, especially as a woman, you start numbing it
Mhm.
with substances or with food, with TV or with social media or with whatever, we can numb these feelings with a lot of different things, with work even or working out. And I think that's what happens. And I think that women, especially if they're, we're raised to be people pleasers. That's just how society has placed us, is to please others. We have to be graceful and we have to not speak up. And I think that that really has impacted us. So we kind of just, you know, go into ourselves or go into our work or go into being a mother, and we lose sight of who we truly are as humans. And I think that it's important for us to really get back to that. And when I got sober in 2023, that's when all of these things really I really started to think about these things. Who am I? What am I bringing to the world? Um, because I can't just continue to numb my pain.
You mentioned sober, so I take it there was some alcohol um, problems along this journey.
Mhm.
Were there also substance abuse involved in this? Because usually one goes with the other, but I'll let you tell me if that's true or not. So there was both. So how much of this was only you can answer this question. So you mentioned things started to become a little bit more clairvoyant once you stop drinking and come off the different type of medications. Um, but was a lot of this just used to, do you think going into the swinging lifestyle was just your way, another way of trading one addiction for another to see which one would outweigh the other?
I think for some people it can be. And I absolutely think that you have a good point with that. Um, for me personally, I didn't really start heavily drinking until after we had been in the swinger lifestyle. And I think that swinging and the parties and the excess of alcohol being at these parties did not help the situation. But it was definitely environmental, not just to swinging, but to being in the sex work industry. But I think that when we started, I just really wanted more sexually with women, and that was what it really was my bisexuality. But I do think that that can happen. I think people get addicted to the swingers lifestyle in the sense of they get addicted to these parties and this attention, and they don't look at, inside and say, okay, well, maybe this is just some sort of an addiction, or what is my relationship to the lifestyle look like?
I'm gonna speak from experience. I'm not gonna mention these individuals, but let's talk about consequences and the outcomes.
Mhm.
I know firsthand several couples that got involved in that, and I never will forget it because kept being invited to a party. And I kept saying, man, you guys party every Friday and Saturday? Like, this is how naive I was. I wasn't that naive, but because this was like maybe in the 2000 era and early 2000, I had no idea about the white rocks and all the little sign symbols and tokens that are out there. But anyway, long story short, I saw something came to my phone and I was like, what the hell is this? And the lady actually face was exposed. And I was like, holy crap. And I talked to both of them. I said, well, first of all, who's doing the videos? And the lady says, my husband. And I'm seeing tons of activity going on. And long story short, there was consequences. The game changed. It happened to another couple that I had no idea was involved in this. Then the game changed because I remember asking this question to one of the females. The husband was down with the Craigslist picking the guy out, and they had rules of engagements. There was with the one
Hmm.
couple, there was no black male, no black men involved in it. He picked the guys and blah blah blah. The other almost the same type of scenarios. But I remember asking the females, "What are you going to do when the game changes?" They didn't think about it at the time, and the game changed. The guys fell in love with younger women. They were no longer the center of attraction because they were beautiful women too. But let's get real. There's also other beautiful women. What if somebody comes in and changes the game? Their whole relationships, their families, and I knew their kids all suffered from that. And I remember when I saw them later, I asked them, I said, if you could do it over again, what would you do different? I said, I never would have done this. That's eyesight ahead of time. But let's just say, for instance, you brought up something that was really cool. You're the life of the party. You're the beautiful girl in there. You're married. Cool. You probably like more women than you do men. But what if the situation is different? What if it's a woman that like both men and women? But the thing that could happen, let's get real. We're humans. Physical touch, emotional stimulation changes the paradox of a swinger's lifestyle. What's your comment on that?
I think that when this happens, and this does happen, and a lot of people comment this does happen. When this happens, 9 times out of 10, it's because there were already holes in a relationship, and swinging was probably used to be a band-aid. But now what swinging did was put a magnifying glass on the issues. Or, like you said, and from what I'm hearing is that like this person met younger girls and he started falling in love with these younger girls. And there was probably a lot of jealousy. There was probably a lot of boundary breaking, because they didn't have sex coaches then, right? Like they didn't have anybody to talk about, and maybe the community was different back then. Now we have so much more support in order to like move through non-monogamy in a different way. If my partner came to me and was like, I met this hot younger girl and I have feelings for her, I would be like, I love that for you. So are we polyamorous now? Does that mean that we're going to move through and evolve through non-monogamy in a different way?
Mhm.
Or is this something that you want to cut off this relationship? But it's all about open communication, and we're not taught that in sex education. We're not taught that in school. We're Our parents don't teach us that, right? Because they probably didn't have open communication. But that's really what it is. And a lot of times when these issues do arise, that's the main issue, is that nobody's communicating properly.
People will listen to this and come to the assumption that you may appear to be like non-sympathetic, like you can just be emotionless. Is that because I think if I'm in a relationship, even if there's no holes in it, and somebody introduces something like this to me, and we're dealing with emotions and feelings, you seem like you can just like take it or leave it. Am I reading that wrong?
I mean, I think no, I mean I'm very empathetic toward those situations, but I think that these are things that we have to really talk about with our partner before we even step foot into this situation. Like, do we have a really good trusting relationship? Do we have a great sex life? And if there are holes in our relationship, or if there are issues or things that we're afraid of, or fears or jealousies that will 100% happen and arise, or communication issues, we should probably speak with somebody or get some professional help and learn some really great ways to deal with that before we even open up our relationship, because that's going to open up a can of worms and we might not be able to come back from that. And I think that that's the most important part of all of it, is like, this lifestyle is not for everybody. And it's not something that, it's not going to fix your sex life. It's not meant to fix your sex life. You, before getting into this, you should have a great sex life. If your wife isn't fucking you right now, am I allowed to say that word?
Yeah. But what do you consider a great
Okay.
life? Because if my wife and me are whoever, my significant other, and we're intimate, and I agree with that 100%, I should be I should be able to tell you what my sexual desires and fantasies are just as
Mhm.
much as you want a house, flowers, and a nice romantic dinner. If those things are uncomfortable, then that is a red flag because we're adults. We should be able to talk about that. But let's go back to what you just said. If my significant other is providing these things to me, why do I need to introduce someone else into the bedroom? Because all that
I
does is
think
open up another can of worms of what I just said. The word is emotional attachment.
mhm. I think for me and for my partner, it's because we get the freedom. This sense of freedom almost puts this weight off of your shoulders. We get this freedom to explore openly, explore our desires with other people who also enjoy exploring their desires openly. And even if you go into these spaces and you go to a sex club or you go into a swinger party and you don't even have sex with anybody else, just being there with people who can be their authentic selves and people who, are able to just that layer of sexuality, kind of the elephant in the room sort of thing is gone. And you can talk about your desires and fantasies with other people,
Yeah, but how can you
and
just
that's
go and just
fun.
fuck a whole bunch of people in a room and call that an emotional attachment to any degree? Let's get real. I mean, if I'm in a situation and just say I know all these people, because I asked this lady the same thing. Do you know these people? She goes, yeah. And I mean, like to me, there has to be a sense of morality. I mean, to just go in and just fuck a whole bunch of different people is not what I consider developing an emotional attachment, because if I'm fucking this many people, I'm at another swinger club doing the same shit. So where is the morals here? Does that make any sense?
It does.
It's no
I
more
think that
different than you see it at the
morality,
strip club. It's no more different than going to the strip club and she's dancing for this guy, she's dancing for this guy. Where is the morals? I guess I don't even. I'm not in it, so I'm. That's why you're on here to explain it.
I think morality and ethics are based on the person. What one person might think is immoral or wrong, or they wouldn't do that, for another person, that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. And just like not everybody at the swingers club is having 12-person orgies, some people might be. For example, there's something called hot wives, and that's a wife who she'll have gangbangs and she will just get fucked by a bunch of guys in one sitting. That's not something that I enjoy or get pleasure out of. That's just not for me. But if that person enjoys it, have fun, girlfriend. Like, do your thing.
Yeah,
That is good for you. So I think it's just having this non-judgment of other people's
right,
sexual desires and fantasies. People have a lot of different desires and
right.
fantasies. I mean, I know this, and it's the same thing when they come into the strip club, right? Guys will come in. I have a guy that comes in that wants me to pretend that I'm Corilla DeVille and degrade him as Corella DeVille, and he gets sexual pleasure out of that.
Like I said,
Does that
everybody got
mean that
their
there's
own
anything
thing. Yeah,
wrong?
yeah. Everybody got
No.
their own. Everybody's got their own kink, no matter how. And like I said, this is a
Hmm.
judge-free zone, so I get it. Um. Let me ask you a couple more questions, and let me also say thank you for taking time out to come on the show and educate us, because that's what you're doing. My next question for you is, At what point does sex turn into something more than intimacy? When does it cross the line into addiction? And how would you know?
I think just like with alcohol, just like with any substances, just like with food or anything that turns into an addiction, it's your relationship with it. Are you trying to fill a void or a hole using sex?
Mm-hmm.
Because for one, and it's just like with drinking, you don't have to drink every day to be an alcoholic, but it's your relationship with it. You don't have to have sex every day. It's why are we doing this? What is this for? And it's a lot of inner reflection. And I think that, you know, that's a question to really ask yourself. Am I becoming addicted to sex, porn, whatever it is?
Mm-hmm. My next question. Imagine if your husband falls in love with another woman who has a completely different sexual lifestyle than you. How would that make you feel? And how would you handle it, especially if the reverse were true?
I think, if he fell in love with a woman and she was not open to polyamory or swinging or anything like that, that would be something that me and him would discuss. And I would let him know, well, I mean, if you don't want to be in a relationship with me anymore and you want to be in a relationship with her, I understand. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm not afraid of losing my partner because I know at the end of the day that I'm going to be okay and I'm going to be happy.
What are you afraid
It
of?
would suck and it would be really sad and I would be very, very sad and very heartbroken, but I have no control over what my partner does. And this is in monogamy, right? If we were in a monogamous relationship and he had met somebody at work or whatever, I have no control over that. I have no control over who he falls in love with. And I think that that's the biggest part of that is it doesn't matter if you're monogamous or non-monogamous. These things can happen. Um, but if we're living in fear constantly that our partner is going to find somebody better than us, that's an us problem that we need to deal with. And I think it would be, and that's something that my husband has dealt with. When we talk about opening up our relationship a little bit more, I think that those fears and insecurities are very valid for people. And over time, we've been able to really deal with them and support each other on our journey of recognizing that, like, if the fear of losing your partner is, yes, a valid fear, but it's something that we have to really deconstruct
Mhm.
and be okay with ourselves.
What are some of the things that you and your husband had to deal with? I mean, because I got to be real. I could not walk into a place and if my partner had this fantasy of being gang banged and me going in there watching it could not happen with me. What are some of the things that even her with another man, me watching her get fucked by a guy and she's liking it? I'm sorry. I'm not at that mindset. So I find it hard to believe that two individuals, you and your husband, can just cut shit off and just walk in and do these things and it doesn't affect you in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So let's say that it did at one point. What were those things that affected him that he was uncomfortable with and he had to adjust to? Because this is the thing, he had to adjust to it. And then vice versa with you having to adjust to whatever you might have seen him participate in.
I think one of the biggest things that comes to mind is anytime that there was a miscommunication. So there was like a time where he got a blowjob from a single woman, and I was drunk and passed out on the corner because ex-alcoholic here, I would get a little too tipsy at parties and it was not good. And I told him to go do what he wanted to do. And in his mind, that meant I'm gonna go get my dick sucked by a unicorn. And after that, and a unicorn is a single female in the swinger lifestyle, by the way. And after that, I was like, fuck. I just opened up this can of worms. I feel like he cheated on me. Oh my God. And I knew that he didn't do it with malice because he told me about it and we were both very open, but it was after the fact that I felt these feelings. And that's when I had to start really working, opening up to my community and get support from my community, getting support from a coach, from a sex coach
What do you
really
mean
helped,
support from
and
your community?
recognizing that like it's okay to feel jealous. And that's when we had to sort of like our boundaries had to sort of switch around a little bit, because I felt insecure and I was afraid of those things because those are normal feelings to have. And I think for him, it was like when I went on the dance floor and I kissed a single guy who was very attractive, and I didn't tell my partner that. I didn't ask him like, is this something that you're comfortable with? So it was on both occasions um a miscommunication that we both had with each other, and that's why we're really good about communicating that with each other. And if he says I'm not comfortable with that, then I respect that. If I say I'm not comfortable with that, but being able to move through it in a slower pace instead of kind of having this, okay, well, you ask for forgiveness, you don't ask them if you could do this. Having more of a mindset of talking it out and working through it has been a lot better for us.
Two-part question. How does I know you can't answer for him, but does he physically watch you having intimacy with multiple guys?
He has. It's not like, and I can answer for him. We talk about this a lot, but so he doesn't get pleasure from that, and some people don't, right? Like he's very neutral. He knows that I enjoy it. And it's different than like me when I see him with other women. Um, I get a lot of pleasure from that and I enjoy it so much. And I'm like, this, I consider myself a cuck queen and he's a hot husband. So if I could see him with multiple women, that would be like my ultimate fantasy is like him doing a reverse gangbang of like a bunch of women, right? So I think that he's very neutral about it, but he knows that I enjoy it, and he's like, if you enjoy it, I just want you to enjoy it and be happy.
How does he enjoy it with you and other men?
He doesn't. So like he again, he's just neutral. He's not bisexual. So when we're couple swapping or we're in sexual interactions, a lot of times he's the center of attraction for me, or it's sort of like he's involved in his, with his partner, and I'm involved with my partner, and then we come back to it and really afterwards talk about it, and we just, oh my gosh, it was so great when he did this. Oh, when she did this, this was great, and it's a great way for us to build intimacy. But he's not really involved with that because it doesn't bring him pleasure. He's just like very neutral. He's watched and he's just like, meh, I could take it or leave it.
Before we wrap up, thank you once again for coming and share. I got to have you come back because I got thousands more questions. I got 1,000 more questions. Trust me. And let me also tell the viewers, this may not be for everybody. Everybody have their own. This is what I tell people. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but whatever goes on behind closed doors, you're an adult and you do whatever you need to do to keep you in the right frame of mind. So I'm not here to judge. Um, Adults do what they do. But this is a question. What's the end game here for you and your husband? What's the end game? What's the message that you want to get out?
I think the end game for us is just to continue to grow and learn about ourselves and build intimacy as a couple by learning about each other,
Hmm.
exploring our desires, uh, really taking the time to feel what we're doing and maybe slowing down at some points and speeding up at other points. But I imagine myself being a swinger for the rest of my life. I'm gonna be that, 80-year-old lady at hedonism who's on the dance floor just having a great time. Um, Same with him. I imagine us being together forever, of course. But I just imagine this self-healing and self-growth process that we are continuing to go on. And this journey, it has no stopping point, really. And I think my biggest message to get out there to people is, we may love a little bit differently and we may have different relationship styles and designs, but overall, we're just people who are who we are, um, just like anyone else. And I think that there's nothing wrong with being open-minded and being curious about other people's relationships. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative. It just means it's different from yours.
Once again, thank you for coming on. How can the viewers listen to your podcast before we wrap up?
So my podcast is on all podcast platforms. It's called The Pineapple Express Podcast, a millennial swingers podcast. You'll see me with an upside down pineapple, and there's lots of great educational info on there. And if you are on social media, I'm at the Pineapple Express Podcast on Instagram, and on TikTok, I'm the same thing.
What about what is there um brand behind the pineapple? What is that? Where did that come from?
That's a
We know
great
about the white.
question.
We know about the white rocks. I knew a little bit about the rocks in people's yard, but is that the new sign for swingers now? Is the pine upside down pineapple?
So I think that really in modern culture, it's become a symbol of unity, just in the same way that like the rainbow flag is for the LGBTQIA plus community, or the heart infinity symbol is for polyamory. And I think a lot of that just has to do with the cheeky nature of it, and swingers are very cheeky. The actual representation of a pineapple means that you're hospitable, and in smaller communities, they didn't have the internet, right? Like in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, they didn't have the internet to meet other swingers. So they would put these upside down pineapples on their door. It was really, and I think it also came from like cruise ships and being in these sort of like tropical places. So nobody really knows the full 100% history. And if anybody did, it would definitely be me because I get asked this question a lot, because swinger, the culture has been so taboo for so long. But what I can tell you is on social media in like 2020, 2021, swingers would start putting upside down pineapples in their grocery carts. And this became this sort of cheeky thing like, oh, am I a swinger? Am I going to find other swingers at the grocery store? And then it really just developed into this symbol over time. And definitely it is the modern symbol. If you see somebody with an upside down pineapple, they are most likely a swinger, not necessarily just a pineapple, but it has to be upside down.
Mm, mm, mm. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton show.